on the screen there is heartfelt praising, some would say it's dance and jubilation, from the camp of former Rivers State Governor, the current Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike. Now, on Friday, February 28, 2025, the Supreme Court passed judgment and handed the reins of power to the Martins Amaewhule-led State or House of Assembly, it would seem, although that is still subject to debate. But after the pronouncement, former governor of the state, Nyesom Wike, had this to say.
There is nothing like Amaewhule faction. What the Supreme Court said, the budget should be presented to the properly constituted assembly, which is the authentic leadership of the assembly led by Martin Chike Amaewhule. But first of all, let's give God the glory, let's give God the honor that today, being the 28th of February 2025, God has been able to do it all for everybody, for the interest of the people of the state. I've always said that the will of justice is sluggish, but it will come when it will come.
Meanwhile, in a swift reaction, Governor Siminalayi Fubara has assured people at the All-Reach State that he will implement without reservations the recent Supreme Court verdict after carefully reviewing its certified true copy. There are concerns following a statement about reviewing the CTC, which is compared to having thrown in a caveat into his decision. Nevertheless, the embattled governor had more to say.
We are all aware of the recent Supreme Court judgment and the pronouncement regarding aspects of the lingering political disputes in our dear state. Although we disagree with the judgment, we are bound to obey the order made therein as a law-abiding government. Since inception, we have conducted the affair of government within the framework of our Constitution, due process, and the rule of law. While we are not above mistakes, because we are humans, we believe that we have not, as a government, done anything deliberately to trample on the rule of law or the hallowed principles of constitutional governance. Accordingly, I've had a meeting with my team of lawyers, and they have assured me that the certified true copy of the judgment may be available to them by Friday, the 7th March of 2020.
There are certain areas, however, that need some clarification following the governor's statement directing all heads of local government administration to immediately take over the administration of the 23 local government councils pending the conduct of fresh elections by the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission. Does this mean that the Martins Amaewhule camp will not resume today? Who and what order will the police abide by?
Would there be mounted pressure and the governor declaring a state of emergency should violence erupt? And what is the way forward for Governor Siminalayi Fubara? Now, join us this morning for this discussion is founder and CEO of the Albino Foundation, Epelle, and legal practitioner Emmanuel Erhirhi. Mr. Jake will be joining us during the course of our conversation. Now, good morning to you, Barrister Erhirhi, and thanks for joining us on Breakfast Central. Can you kindly unmute your device if you can, please? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And what's your reaction to the Supreme Court judgment on Friday, and what legal arguments presented in the case, and on what basis did the Supreme Court make this ruling?
Well, first and foremost, I want to appreciate the Supreme Court for coming out with this landmark decision with respect to the political crisis that have ravaged Rivers State. You see, the rule of law and the doctrine of separation of power has actually played out in the decision that have been handed down by the Supreme Court. And that is the way to go in a nascent democracy. Now, the crisis that had been ravaging Rivers State in the last year actually have been laid to rest by the Supreme Court by its decision. First and foremost, what were the issues? I think we need to enumerate the issues for you to appreciate.
Mr. Erhirhi, are you with us? Okay, there seems to be a bit of a technical network glitch there. We're hoping that that can be resolved so we can get back into the conversation. But there are a number of matters that, issues that Emmanuel Erhirhi will speak to. But what we can all agree would be the fact that the elections that were conducted in Rivers State, October 5th elections that were conducted last year, that the Supreme Court has set this election aside, meaning that there will be new elections that will be carried out in, to determine who the local government chairmen are. Also, the court had upheld the judgment that had stopped the central bank from disbursing allocation to Rivers State, pending certain conditions being met.
And one of the questions I wanted to ask the legal expert is, at what point do you know that those conditions have been met? Is there a time frame, and how do we? I mean, one of the conditions would be that, the governor has come out to say, I'm going to respect the order of the Supreme Court, even though I have my reservations. And we saw that in his speech to the public, to the press yesterday. So I guess it's one of them. And of course, the conduct of fresh elections, which is another issue. And there are also political issues around it, that these would have effects on payment of salaries and running of the state projects and all of that. That was the Supreme Court right to, to add such a, some would say, extreme measure in order to force compliance.
Right. I mean, also to look at the case about the legitimacy of the lawmakers. The arguments I've seen against it would be the fact that there's still another case challenging the legitimacy of the Martin Amaewhule-led administration and sort of determining if they are still legally entitled to refer to themselves as members of the House based off the allegations of them, saying that they're moving the campaign, right? So, because there's another matter, one of the interpretations I saw, some people say the Supreme Court should attend to matters brought before it, and because there's another matter.
Exactly. They can't decide, okay, this is also Rivers State, let's talk about it.
Yes.
They can only act on what is before it. But these things take time. They say the axles of the judiciary grinds really slowly. So, and there are real life implications. People need to be paid salaries. Development needs to happen. There are ongoing projects. You need to pay contractors and all of that. I've seen this sort of situation play out in Lagos State when the current president was governor. He created local government development areas, LCDAs, and the then president, Olusegun Obasanjo, wasn't happy about it. So he stopped allocation to Lagos State. And I guess that's one of the reasons why they've been able to grow their internal revenue to what it is today. So they were forced to, look inwards, and maybe Rivers State might be looking towards that. But I don't think it's going to take that long. Governor Fubara has come out to say, look, I respect the decision of the Supreme Court, so we should expect compliance from him. And of course, I'm sure he's talking to his Attorney General and getting legal advice from him and of course his team.
And it's also interesting, it will be interesting to get a sense of what the people of Rivers State are feeling about the Supreme Court judgment, especially because when this matter had been in court for the longest time, the rivalry had been on for a while. But we saw that Siminalayi Fubara seemed to get a lot of support from the people of Rivers State. Remember when the assembly complex was broken down? Many people didn't speak against it as much as they should have. They said it was politics, aura for aura, band for band, So a number of the times when it seemed like Siminalayi Fubara may have gotten some measure of criticism, he was getting support instead. So I wonder if the people who threw their support behind Siminalayi Fubara will now withdraw it based on the fact that the tide seems to have turned in favor of Governor Nyesom Wike, who refers to the Supreme Court judgment, saying that it is the end of the reign of impunity in Rivers State. What this reign of impunity would look like would be, of course, him referring to the fact that Siminalayi Fubara dared to present a budget to
4 people.
4 people, right? The argument, some would argue that he may have done something similar. It wasn't 4 people, but he's also presented the budget to an incomplete house.
That is not so holy.
Right.
And there are more questions about the political stability in Rivers State. What happens next? Okay, now the Supreme Court has spoken. Does it mean that, both parties will shift their swords? Is there any new room for further reconciliation and all of that? And of course, the battle for 2027. It's funny how we always look 2 years ahead. We haven't even gone past half of 2025. And in most political discussions, there's always talk about the next electoral cycle. I mean, I guess that's what happens.
And you know what the future
Nigeria.
of it might be for not just the people of Rivers State, but also the political career of Siminalayi Fubara. There was a point where settlement was an option on the table when he just got into the office, when the initial issue started, and the president, intervened as the leader of their party. He intervened. The peace accord, was brokered. And they seem to have terms and conditions,
yes.
but it was temporary peace. It was the calm before the storm that eventually broke loose. And Siminalayi Fubara was determined to fight to the finish. So what will this mean? If the 27 lawmakers are reinstated, is there a possibility that they might impeach him? And if they impeach him, what next?
Yes.
Does that then mean that we might have to conduct elections? Or do we then say that the governorship then, who then becomes the governor? What are the chances of Tony Patrico, who was a candidate of the People's Democrat, of the All Progressives Congress, I beg your pardon? What are his chances in Rivers State? Does this
very
increase
valid
his chances?
And pertinent questions, especially the impeachment angle. But I believe we have Barrister Erhirhi back with us. Yes, so thank you very much. You were talking to us about your interpretation of the judgments. Could you pick up from...
And I think you stopped at, there were certain issues, and it was the issues you were about to list.
Yes. Like I said earlier on, the issues that necessitated the decision by the Supreme Court, by members who have approached the court right from the High Courts, Federal High Court and Court of Appeal respectively, has to do with, one, the budget presentation by the Governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Fubara, to only 5 members of the Rivers State House of Assembly, whereas there are other 27 members who were elected by their elected representatives from various constituencies. And by virtue of Section 120, 121, and 122 of the 1999 Constitution, which has to do with powers and control of public funds, whereby the governor of the state would present an appropriation bill before the House for authorization for expenditure for the next fiscal year or financial year. Now, those members were denied that privilege of presentation of the bill, including the Speaker and the 26 members who approached down to the Supreme Court to give validity to such appropriation bill by the governor. Now, the governor's own position is that because they defected from political party A to political party B, that by virtue of Section 109, they've lost their seats by such defection. But the court is here to make pronouncement on that issue of defection by those members, and until that pronouncement is here to be made, those members are still valid members of the House of Assembly, that the Rivers State governor ought to present the budget before them. That is on one breath. Then two, on the other breath is that with respect to the local government autonomy given to local government and the time frame for which elections need to be conducted, the governor, in a bid to meet the deadline of October, directed or mandated the State Independent Electoral Committee to conduct local government elections, as the local government elections as a third tier of government have been given full-fledged autonomy like the states and the federal government. Again, there were flagrant breaches of the Electoral Act, which regulates alongside other enabling statutes of electoral law for the conduct of local government election. Now, what are the breaches? First and foremost, electoral processes are kick-started with voters' registration and other incidents that follows thereafter. Now, the people said the provision of Section 9 of the Electoral Act with respect to national voters' registration have not been complied with respect to also giving mandatory 360 days for the election to be conducted at the local government level. Now, notwithstanding the Federal High Court decision stopping INEC from releasing voters' register to Rivers State government for the conduct of the election, the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission still went ahead to conduct that election. And in view of Section 150 of the Electoral Act, paragraph 4, it said, paragraph 3, it said, sub 3, it said, any election to a local government area that is conducted by a state electoral commission in violation of subsection 1 shall be invalid. It is as a result of Section 150, sub 1, paragraph sub 1, 2, and 3, that the Supreme Court said the exercise conducted at the Rivers State by the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission with respect to the local government election is invalid. So that is the other breath. And then the third breath is that funds honorarily from the money allocation to be given to Rivers State, in as much as the governor have acted executively recklessly, that such funds should not be released by CBN to Rivers State government pending when a democratically elected local government administration is put in place and when it represents the budget of 2024 to a constituted House of Assembly in place.
Wow, so many issues here to establish, so many gray areas. And I think the one that stands out most for me is also determining the state of Martin Amaewhule and the other lawmakers. What are your expectations as to what the next steps should be? The governor has said that he's going to wait until they get a copy of the certified true copy of the judgment, and maybe they should get to this week, and then they will know what the next steps are. But what do you believe the next steps should be?
Well, the next step, if you listen to the broadcast by the governor after delivery of the judgment, even though he's here to receive the certified true copy of the judgment, as he said, that the team of lawyers are awaiting the delivery of same by Friday. If he study it and the legal team, the only advice they will give to him is to abide by the orders made by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the final court of the land. His judgment, whether you are dissatisfied or not, you have no other way or avenue to appeal against it. It remains final. Now, what is expected of the governor is to quickly appreciate and recognize the fact that Honorable Martins and the other members are still the elected representatives of the Rivers State House of Assembly, notwithstanding their defection to another political party, which is already sub judice before the courts. Now, the representation of the bill, the appropriation bill before them, should be done as a matter of urgency. Now, I'm even happy that he appreciates the fact that, yes, the Supreme Court has made a final pronouncement, even though it's not in agreement with the judgment so delivered. But the judgment remains valid and subsisting, and he should do the needful to ensure that the House is formally inaugurated. Even though they have been inaugurated at its first sitting, they should continue their legislative business, because these members are representing constituencies who are expectant of what their representative ought to bring to their table. They have been denied representation all this while because of the legal tussle between the legislative arm and the executive arm, which have been resolved finally by the Supreme Court, which is the judicial arm. So the governor, as a matter of urgency, should allow them to come back to work, ensure that he presents the budget to them, and like he rightly said, the local government chairman, he has told them to hand over the reins of power to the administrators, pending when the State Independent Electoral Committee would conduct election. Now, again, the problem I have with the reconducting of that election is that the State Independent Electoral Committee should, as a matter of urgency, comply with.
Okay, it's time for us to thank you, Barrister Erhirhi. It's time for us to bring in our second guest on this topic, Mr. Jake Epelle, joining us from Switzerland. Very good morning to you, Mr. Epelle, and thanks for joining us on Breakfast Central.
Thanks, and good morning, Nigerians. News Central, you're always at your game. Thank you for informing Nigerians and being very objective in your reportage.
Thank you very much, sir. You're from Rivers State, and I guess this is very close to your heart and very personal. How does this Supreme Court judgment, how does the ruling impact the ongoing power struggle between Governor Fubara and FCT Minister Nyesom Wike? Do you think the Supreme Court judgment would allow both parties to sheath their swords so that peace can reign and governance will go on in Rivers State?
Thank you for that question. I am here in Geneva to attend Convention of Rights of Persons with Disability, which is an arm of the human right. And so as human right defender, one of my roles is to ensure that rule of law is adhered strictly. And the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land. I may not totally, absolutely, in my personal opinion, agree with some of their rulings, but there's nothing anybody can do. You know, I will come back to this, but however, the impact of this decision, and sometimes I wonder if these judges, you know, think of the impact of their decisions on the common people. I know that lawyers will say there is no emotion in law, and sometimes they even say there is no morality in law, you know, but I always advocate for recognition of morality in the midst of legality. It's one thing to say withhold allocation, and my brother and sister, this is why I make no apologies when I shed tears on channel. And I'm almost close to that, because this is going to take a huge impact on the common people. I speak for the common people. I am amongst the common people. This is going to take a toll on access to health, access to education, access to simple social services. And I want to say this is not about Fubara. This is not about trying to get to an individual. In doing this, you impact the whole community, you know, and I don't know. I haven't read the full judgment. Neither am I a lawyer, but my moral, objective interpretation shows that there's still a pending case, which this judgment, in my opinion, does not nullify. And that pending case is the case of whether these 27 lawmakers still recognized by law, or maybe a further interpretation of Section 109 subsection G. I hope I'm correct in putting that. You know, that clarity needs to be made available, because right now what you're seeing is misinterpretation, miscommunication, all kinds of private interpretation. You know, this is what I want. I want this at the beginning, that this whole scenario is going to throw the state and the nation into a constitutional crisis. And it's playing out. Right now, it's playing out. You know, I don't care who. Go ahead.
I think another angle I would like to hear from is, you know, in terms of how the reaction is in River State. When the crisis was brewing, we saw that Siminalayi Fubara got a lot of support from elders, political leaders in River State, and even from the people. Now that the tide seems to have turned, what's the reaction? Is he still getting that support, or have people now leaned more towards former Governor Nyesom Wike?
I don't need to think twice to answer this. Yes. Siminalayi enjoys huge support. Huge support. You can't beat that. Forget about what you see on TV. There are pockets of support for the pro-Wike, which oftentimes happens in Abuja or some side of Port Harcourt that is leaning towards him. Now, but that's not where I'm going. As an elder, my job is to call for peace. Enough is enough. The pain is too much on the populace of Rivers State. Enough is enough. Governance have been stifled. The ability of the sitting governor to do the needful have become practically impossible. Sometimes I chatted with him a few days ago. The guy is just traumatized, not because of the judgment. It's the fact that he just can't do the thing that he swore to do. You know, so I think, you know, now there are news peddling that, oh, they are going to start an impeachment proceeding. I mean, I don't have evidence to say that, but it's making round, okay? However, look, if I'm Wike, this is the time to show maturity. This is the time to show, he's always talking about integrity. This is the time to show integrity. He will become the hero of this process if at the end of the day, he said, look, I proved my point, you can go ahead and go.
Okay, do you think that anything could have been done differently?
Around the corner. Sir?
Do you think anything could have been done differently? And what would you say to those who have criticized you and other elders in Rivers State, saying that you probably did not meddle in as early as you should have and in the way that you should have to ensure that the two warring factions would have had some form of peace?
Will you believe that? How many times have I been on your show calling for peace? I've tried as much as possible, despite the fact that I always make sure that I make this conflict of interest known, that I'm from Opopo. I know Sim. He's my brother. I'm not going to deny him because right now it looks like, you know, things are not going his way. All right? I believe that he is a good leader. I believe that he means well. Did the elders try to nip this in the bud? We did. The point is that, unfortunately, he may have his reason, and rightly so. It was difficult to reach somebody like Wike. I've been on TV, even on channel on Friday. I called to say if he wants to meet with me, I am willing to meet with him. He is not, nobody has it all. Nobody is perfect. You know, well, he may say, who am I? What can I do? I'm not a politician. You understand? You never know who God can use.
Okay, now, Mr. Epelle, just before we wrap this up, finally, like you said, you speak for the people, and your concern is for the ordinary people, and we've seen the implications of this from the Supreme Court ruling. Now, looking at Nigeria holistically and looking towards the future, looking ahead, how do we prevent this successor and the current governor clash and schisms from happening? If you look at Kaduna State, we had the same with Governor Obasani and former FCT Minister Emmanuel Erhirhi. What can we do as a people to, you know, let this their predecessors leave their successors to just face the business of governance in their states?
You know, my friend, if I were to be in Nigeria, probably in Lagos, I would have forcefully tell Kayode to bring both of you, and I would like to have lunch with you, because this is a nationalist, patriotic question that you have asked, and I commend you for that. Now, what do? We need to make sure. Let me call on the president. Let me call on influential people. We need to bring Wike and Fubara into one room and let them know that they can inflame Rivers State with what is happening. They can throw the entire state into anarchy. Listen, my friend, I'm not a harbinger of bad news. Go and check wars, civil war, genocide. It starts like this. It starts like this. And if we keep treating this like, oh, it doesn't matter, you know, this is we're on the path of a dangerous, very dangerous situation. And it's the poor that will suffer. Most of these politicians, their children are abroad. They feel that they are safe. You understand? But let me go back to what we can do. 1, reconciliation. 2, reconciliation. 3, reconciliation. But I know we're struggling with time. You see, the judiciary needs to be very, very careful, because the judiciary is gradually stifling, destroying the democratic process in Nigeria. Now, we will go and elect somebody that should lead. The court will decide who leads. This nonsense must stop. It's not the level of meddling of judicial, and not of the judges. I mean, they are fantastic judges, excellent judges, you know. I was in court a few days ago.
I wish we had so much time to unpack all of this, but I do like to say a big thank you to you, and we definitely will have you back. Thank you very much.
There's a whole lot to talk about. We need to fix judiciary. Judiciary is the bane of the problem of democracy in Nigeria.
Right.
I don't care if they want to arrest me, let them arrest me when I come back.
No, Jack Epelle, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
And also Barrister Emmanuel Erhirhi, who joined us earlier from Delta State. Thank you.